Hello, everyone. Welcome into the space. Glad you could join us today. All right, it's a quick half hour, so I'm going to go ahead and start jumping right in. I am Vanessa Lowe. I host Vanessa's Money Hour on G-Town Radio. I also host this wonderful monthly show, Financing Philadelphia's Future, continuing conversation all about the Philadelphia Public Bank. And today we're very excited to have Reverend Gregory Holston. Let's go through some sort of logistics on the next slide, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So the best way to participate is set your screen to speaker view by using the icon that's usually at the top right of your screen. We want your questions. Put those into the chat and just let us know which section of the city you're from. Mount Airy, Center City, North Philly. And if you want to join the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition, enter your email and your name in the chat so we can stay in touch with you. All right, so hopefully you all are joining us because you got the press release about this, our 47th episode of Financing Philadelphia's Future. And it had a lot of information about our guest, Reverend Gregory Holston, who I am proud to know and have worked with for a little while under POWER, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild, back when they were called POWER. But I'm going to do part of the intro, part of the background, because there's a lot in the press release, and we want to leave some time to hear from Reverend Gregory Holston.
Yeah,
So,
please don't read all that.
I am not going to read it all, but I'm going to read some key parts here. So Reverend Gregory Holston is the Executive Director of Just Nation, Inc., a racial justice organization dedicated to challenging structural racism in all its forms in Philadelphia and beyond. He's a pastor, activist, educator, and civil rights leader with over 30 years of experience in education, law, and nonprofit sector and ministry. And he played a vital role in advancing equity in Philadelphia and beyond. He's held leadership roles across policy and advocacy spaces, including serving as executive director of several nonprofits. I want to include this last part. As senior advisor on policy and advocacy for District Attorney Larry Krasner's office, he helped lead a coalition that secured $68 million in new city funding. That coalition evolved into the 57 Block Coalition that now has 70 organizations involved that is dedicated to reducing gun violence through investments in Philadelphia's hardest hit neighborhoods. Welcome, Reverend Holston.
Thank you. So glad to be with you.
And last time you were with us, I think we talked a lot about the 57 Block Coalition. But today, it sounds like we're talking about reparations. I didn't even know we were allowed to still use that word.
Yeah, it seemed in the last couple of years here, because of the pushback and the attacks, that people are a little afraid to use the word, but it's still here. It's still viable. It's still important to be dealt with.
All right, give us a little intro or grounding in your thoughts on it, and then we'll move into some questions and answers maybe.
Well, first of all, to understand that to be able to move to reparations, there is a process of reparations, a process of really what I call reconciliation. First, we must tell the truth. We must always speak the truth. And we understand the truth is under great attack now. And the reason it's under great attack is they understand the process of moving to reparations, process to moving to reconciliation, the process of really bringing this multiracial country together in even deeper ways, is understanding this long legacy of truth and justice and unfairness around the treatment of people of color in this country. And so as they attack the truth, they want to, and with mistruth and misunderstanding, we have to bring back the truth of what all of this is about. And the recognition that both communities of color, Native American communities, Black communities have suffered harm of slavery, the harm of Jim Crow, the harm of redlining, the harm of even mass incarceration. These legacies have lasted for centuries across this country, And if we're going to be fair and just and speak with justice for all people and have some ability to stand morally in the world, we must speak the truth about our own pain, truth about our own situation, truth about what was done in the past so we can move forward in the future together. So the first thing is we talk about truth. Then we have to admit that truth. And then we have to look and say, okay, we won't do that anymore, or what Christians call repentance. And then finally, we get to really the idea of repair. Reparations is the idea of repairing the damage that has been caused by slavery, by Jim Crow, by redlining, by mass incarceration, all of these things that have undermined and belittled and have dehumanized people of color in this country. And we have done it before. We have reached this recognition before with Japanese Americans and internment and World War II, where we paid reparations. We supported reparations for Jewish people after the Holocaust. We have supported reparations time and time again for other people. And in fact, in the Civil War, we gave reparations to those who enslaved the people of color, because we thought that was more important than actually giving reparations to the people who had been enslaved. So we have this legacy of actually doing reparations. We have to move to a process of real repair, and we still can do it even in this time, and probably even more so in this time. We need to speak more about it in a stronger and deeper way.
So you're involved with the public banking movement. What do you see the role of the Philadelphia Public Bank playing in reparations in the Philadelphia area?
Oh, in a powerful way. And thankful for all those who have been working together on this idea and how do we address reparations through a public banking system that can be able to put deeper investments in the communities that have been disinvested in for years. Redlining started in the 1930s. The process was intentionally disinvesting or not investing in communities of color because of the idea of eugenics, that Black people weren't worth the investment. The better investment was to put that into white communities. From the 1930s through the 1970s, that was legally done by our country, by our federal government. It was the policy of this nation, and it has been de facto ever since. Black communities still lose about $1 billion each year in loans that they should have gotten that they don't get. So what do? So banking is key in terms of dealing with redlining. It was the disinvestment of banks that created the redlining. And so if we have a public bank, now we can now put back the investment that was disinvested in for the last 100 years. And we can use public funds, public tools, public pension funds, and other public funds that really in a community, a city like Philadelphia, which is a city that is 40% African-American city, a majority minority city, we're actually going to use the funds of people of color to reinvest in their communities and be able to deal and address reparations. So the public bank is a powerful tool that can be used to address reparations.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So Peter Winslow is here, and he was just telling us about you're involved with the Public Banking Institute, which is kind of like is it okay to call it the trade association for all of the cities and municipalities trying to do public banking? Is that an okay way to describe it?
No, Vanessa, I wouldn't call it a trade association, but I would call it an umbrella organization.
Okay.
That encompasses not only public banking itself, but the National Infrastructure Bank and postal banking and all efforts to democratize money.
Yes. Sorry for my mistake on the language piece, because we don't have a public bank yet. That is the problem.
Right.
We do have a public bank institute that is pushing with all its might to create that here in the city of Philadelphia. And it's really a disgrace in a city that has a poverty rate of 31% for African American people, that we're not creating instruments and tools to alleviate the Black poverty in this city in more deeper and creative ways. Public banking is one of those ways. And I'm frustrated to hear that it was passed, or at least the beginning parts of it were passed, and we have had little movement on it since.
Yeah, we're all very sorry about that. Peter?
Well, I would remind everybody that Councilmember Young sponsored a resolution that was passed unanimously by City Council on May 1st, calling for a hearing for the administration to essentially explain what progress they have made in establishing the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. And we know the answer to that is nothing, especially since the only thing that's required of the mayor is to appoint the initial board of directors from the list that was presented to Mayor Kenny by City Council. That's it. Appoint the initial board, and the city solicitor can file for incorporation with the Pennsylvania Secretary of State, and within days, we're off to the races.
So there's a public hearing that has been approved and will happen, you're saying, Peter? I didn't know about that.
It's
So tell
been
us a little bit
approved.
more on what should people be doing about that? Because has the mayor said, yeah, I'll be there too, or tell us more.
It's been approved, but the hearing has not been scheduled.
Okay.
So until we actually have a hearing, there's really been no action.
Yes, and again, so the outrage is to push for that hearing to finally happen, but and continue to express and explain to our own community how public banking can be a real tool to move us forward on reparations, move us forward on investing in the hardest hit communities. One thing we continually said with the 57 Block Coalition, and continue to say, that community investment creates public safety, not policing. Community investment is what creates the safety. Where everybody's talking about these crime rates going down here in Philadelphia, 30%, other cities, 30%. What has been the key over the last 4 years? Our police levels in Philadelphia have remained basically the same over the last 4 years. We have not increased policing at all. And in fact, in some ways, we weren't hiring enough police. In fact, the lowest level of number of police we've had in the last 60 years is right now. So what has made the difference? Our more investment in our community, more public investment, or investment in gun violence prevention. We did a little as $1 million in 2018. Now we're doing 30 million here in the city of Philadelphia, another 30 million coming from the state. These kinds of investments have made a real difference in safety. And other people have replicated the same thing across the nation. When we have a public bank, we can make even deeper investments into our communities and create even safer havens for our people.
Reverend Holston, can you give us some specific examples of those types of programs and how they've been effective? Like, what is it, hiring people to go into the community and be at the basketball courts? I don't know. Tell us.
It is holistic in every way. It is from dealing with trauma, like Mothers in Charge and Emir, who focus on the trauma of the families. Much of the violence, the child that's traumatized at 6, oftentimes at 16, is the very perpetrator of gun violence. Violence begets violence, and people who have been assaulted oftentimes end up doing the assaulting. Everybody understands that. Hurt people hurt people. So if you're addressing that 6-year-old and 7-year-old and 8-year-old and 9-year-old with real trauma services for the whole family, that is less likely than having that person at 16 create violence. So you start with trauma service. You start with mentoring, like the Father's Day Committee and frontline dads who do a lot of just basic mentoring of particularly of young men, of young Black men here in the city. But then you look at other places like NOMO, who has all these relationships with schools and the after school program that the NOMO Foundation does. Or you look at Germantown Men Who Care, who do mentoring, but go right into schools with the mentoring. They mentor those middle schools where much of the young people have challenges. So all of these are the kinds of investments. Many of those groups got investments for the first time, either through the DA's office or through the work of our own city or through the state for the first time, even though they have been doing volunteer work for 20 years. And so that is the kind of investment. Now we're talking about reparation. A public bank that's really serious about reparations will put reparations into the hands of families who need the wealth and need the income, and that income itself help makes the community safe. So it's not just the programs that are being done, it is building the wealth of the entire community that helps create this public investment, this community investment, which creates public safety. So one of the reparation proposals is simply some kind of dollar figure being given back to communities for the damage that has been done and lifting up the wages of everyone.
Got it. Thank you. I see Walt McCree has his hand up. Walt?
I'm going to try to be short on these answers. I don't have too much time.
Yes. Reverend Holston, really nice to meet you. A pleasure. As the son of a pastor myself, I'm working. I know what it's like to work with the flock and the needs. But when reparations get spoken of just loosely, they're often or typically mischaracterized as a certain quantity of money, and that certainly isn't the whole approach at all. I mean, I think you're talking about systemic solutions in which banking becomes a player in rejuvenating and refocusing investment into community. But is there a place for talking about a set amount of money, and how does one figure that, and how does one characterize the justification, if you will, beside the history for doing that?
I rarely talk about that kind of number because that kind of number is astronomical and it immediately makes people afraid to deal with reparations. So if Haiti, for example, now as backward as the idea of reparation is, Haiti, for example, when it won its freedom from France, France made it pay reparations for the loss of the island. It's crazy it is. They've been paying that reparation for over 200 years. So so I'm using that as an example in the sense that reparations cost a lot, but we don't know the time frame or how long we'll pay it or doing numbers of how much is trying to get to an end point. The end point, and for Haiti, it should have ended years ago and should have never started in the first place, but I just use it as the point. But the astronomical number doesn't really make a difference. What we want to do is see the structural change in place so that people can grow and prosper now. And there are things we can do right now to make that happen as a down payment on reparation. Recognizing that the number is so large that we may never get to it, but we can do some stuff now that is right and just and fair as a down payment on reparations to move us forward. So I try to talk in those terms, because if we talk in a number, then a city like Philadelphia says, I can't do anything about reparations. But yes, Philadelphia can. By creation of the public bank, Philadelphia can by creation of a tax system that provides a tax credit, actually a tax credit for reparations, a reparations tax credit tied to those who've been dealing with redlining for the last 100 years in this country. We could do something now as a token amount, recognizing that it's not nearly going to pay the reparation, but will make a down payment on it so that people can move forward. So I try to stay away from the large number figure.
Fair enough. Thank you. Stan Shapiro, I see your hand up.
Rev, nice to see you again. It's been a week since we've seen each other, which seems like forever. The politics of this country is so unique and so troubling, especially in recent years. It used to be that Democrats were elected in North Dakota regularly. George McGovern came from South Dakota. Now it seems fanciful to even talk about, progressives winning in places like that. And it's all about racialized fear. I think that's at the core of 90% of what makes the Republican Party function. But they've done it to the extent that so many white Americans feel like it's them. It's a small pie, and if a bigger portion goes to black folks, the little portion that they feel they've got, they feel tremendously abused by the system. They've never been enslaved. Their ancestors never been enslaved, but nevertheless, they correctly understand that they are being screwed over, not perhaps as badly, but certainly screwed over by the system, and they well may feel that reparations means they are gonna have even less. So how do we, keeping in mind that to have really strong progress as a country, we need to win back the white working class. How do we promote this idea in a way that's appealing to them?
Well, I think we start, number one, by talking about the race. We talk about race in general first, before we talk about reparations. And we talk about race as a thing that hurts not just black people, hurts all of us. The reason we don't have universal health care today is because over 100 years ago, there were white doctors talking about, we don't want to do universal health care because black folk will get it. And we're hoping that they in the next 2 or 3 generations will die away because they won't have health care. So we don't have universal health care because we were so full of race that now, but what happened? When we didn't have it, white people got hurt too. So every time you try to take something away from black people, you hurt white people too. We don't have fair funding for our schools, a more modern example here in the city of Philadelphia. And we found out the higher percentage of color or black people that are in the school district, the less money did they seem to be able to get. Well, then doesn't that hurt white people right here in the city of Philadelphia too? White people who go to school in the public school system, white people in the Northeast, because the school district doesn't get enough money because somebody in the middle state thinks only black people go there. Race always hurts black people more, but race hurts everybody. And racism hurts everybody. And if we can continue with that kind of message so that people in Altoona and people in Aliquippa and people in Williamsport and people in Allentown and Lancaster, if we can just all see where all of this is tied together and what they're experiencing in Johnstown, that is saying very similar to what's happening in North Philly and parts of North Philly and West Philly, the disinvestment in communities. When we build that kind of coalition together, then this conversation about reparations becomes even more clear and more together, because those white folk in the middle of the state, when the steel mills left Johnstown and left them impoverished, they need a rural plan that invests in them, invest in their neighborhoods. And as we stand together to lift up reparations, we also stand to lift up a real plan to do rural investment in those communities so they can be changed too. So when they see the common interests, we can build a coalition together where everyone wins.
Got a little more time. Greg Palmier.
Just make sure my phone doesn't fall.
There you go. Hold on to it. No banging the table. Greg, you're muted, I believe. We can't hear you.
Can't hear me. Wait a minute.
Okay, can you hear
No,
me
we can
now?
hear you. No, sorry, Greg Holston, we can hear you. We cannot hear Greg Palmier. He's working on that.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. All right. Thank
Can you hear me now?
Softly, but go ahead.
Okay. Many of the great movements in this country have come out of the Black church, and being that our mayor, who is charged with, who voted for and supported as a council person this public banking bill, and now has the tools to, in fact, set up a public bank, is a member of Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church. might it be good for yourself to communicate, educate Pastor Waller about public banking, and also maybe ask him to help us encourage our mayor to turn down the campaign contribution she's getting from these big banks that she's presently allowing her money to be deposited in, and start a public banking. Maybe even Pastor Waller could serve on the governing board. Might that be a good idea?
Well, I'm certainly not going to speak for Pastor Waller or any expression of how it is to pastor E9, a church very, very large that has very, very lot of members, a lot of politicians. In fact, the mayor also goes to that church, and so he is the pastor of the mayor. So whatever communications that he has or private conversations that are trying to be an encouragement to her. And so I would not press him in that way, except know that he is a man full of justice and fairness. We have marched together. We have walked together on several things. We've spent time trying to support workers at the Marriott Hotel and other things. And I think as when the time is right, that he may have already shared his thoughts on this. And so we just don't know what those thoughts are because they stay private. And so, but I trust his judgment, and I trust his work, and I trust the justice stuff that he's been involved with and his commitment to justice in this country.
Well, I know.
Thank you. So about 3 years ago, wow, was it that long? The city actually sponsored a conference about reparations, and they invited the area of faith-based institutions. There were about 85 of us who attended. And so there are several faith-based institutions, including my church, Unitarian Society of Germantown, quite a few up in the Northwest up here, and others that have committees on reparations and are doing various things. I've been encouraging my group to really look at like private investing into Black businesses and things like that, and particularly something called the Dream Exchange, which is about to become the first Black-owned stock exchange. So looking at things that are sort of systemic changes that we can make to reverse some of the disinvestment. Any ideas on your part before we end in about 2 minutes?
For churches and congregations, investing in some of the Black churches that are in your communities.
There you go.
Developing a real partnership. And so there's so many that are suffering right now, and they're still the very important link to the Black community as a whole. So reparation. In fact, I knew one church that we actually were seriously thinking about just using part of its endowment to invest in a Black church, to make sure that that ministry would continue to go forward. So those are opportunities, and I would lift that up, and I would not just say the church, but also our other houses of faith, our Islamic faith as well, because they're such important institutions in the Black community.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's 4:59, and what we've started to do is we will turn off the recording in a minute. But thank you all for joining us. And if you want to stay for the remainder of the conversation, which we continue for about another 20 or 25 minutes, you're welcome to. But right now, we'll go ahead and turn off the recording.